ran away from home, and boarded a plane for a girl he met on Roblox, almost paying with his life. This is the true story of 14-year-old Lewis, who simply wanted to escape his difficult life and finally feel needed, but instead found himself in a situation where every minute could be his last. It all started with a simple conversation on Roblox. Lewis, whose in-game nickname was Leviton, was a quiet teenager, the kind of kid at school who was remembered only by his last name on the school register. His classmates considered him normal, just too quiet. After school, he always returned home, went up to his room, closed the door, and turned on the computer. There, a different life began for him, much more understandable and safer than his real life, as the atmosphere at home was always tense. His father worked late, came home tired, and rarely spoke to the family. His mother lived on a wire. She'd get irritated over trivial things and argue with her husband about money. After arguments, his mother would often walk in on Lewis without knocking, just to vent her anger. "Lewis, turn off that computer right now. You've been there all day!" And stare at the screen with such irritation, as if Roblox were the culprit behind the family's problems. Lewis agreed with everything, just to get her out of the room quickly, and so he'd often simply reply, "Okay, Mom, I'm coming." But even then, the door rarely closed quietly. He found it easier to listen to the voices in the game than to his own parents in the hallway. Roblox, especially Bloxburg, was his refuge. There, everything depended on him. He built a house, rearranged furniture, earned in-game currency, and bought things he'd never had in real life. In this world, there was no need to guess the mood of adults. There, Lewis felt not out of place, but needed. One evening, while it was raining outside and her parents were arguing in the kitchen again, a player named Mira logged into the server. She immediately noticed a beautiful, large white house next to the park and wondered who built it. Wow, who built this house? It looks better than half the houses on the server. That builder was Lewis, who immediately responded with embarrassment. "Thank you, I tried really hard." The common theme of the house's design brought them together, and they began talking. First about furniture and role-playing, then about school, family, insomnia, and how strange it was to feel lonely even among people. Mira had a calm communication style. She responded quickly, rarely disappeared, and always seemed to know just what to say when he was at his worst. Within a few days, they were already searching for each other in the game's player list, and then they switched to Discord. The messages flowed from morning until night. Mira sent photos of the street from her window. A cup of coffee, notes with her name in the margins, but never a face. Lewis wasn't bothered. He was content with his voice in short audio clips and phrases like, "You're the only one who understands me." For a boy who never really told anyone anything, this was enough to make him feel more connected to her than to his own family. He changed quickly. At school, he'd stare at his phone under his desk. At home, he'd barely eat dinner because he was rushing upstairs. He stopped going out into the courtyard and texting old friends. His grades began to slip. His father once asked, "Lewis, is something wrong with you? You're not even talking to us." But Lewis just shrugged and said, "You think everything's fine, Dad." He no longer lived from day to day, but from message to message. If Mira delayed a reply, he couldn't concentrate. If she texted him at night, "Are you awake?" he felt like there was someone in this world who cared. One day she said, "I'm tired of living only on my phone. If we met, it would be real." Lewis reread that phrase a dozen times. From that evening on, jokes about meeting became too frequent to remain jokes. They discussed airports, prices, distances, and the easiest days to fool their parents. Mira lived far away, in another state, and this fact alone made the idea crazy. But for Lewis, it didn't seem crazy. In his mind, meeting her was gradually becoming his only chance to feel happy. The first thoughts about money came almost by accident. He saw his mother throw her bag on the chair in the bedroom. He saw an envelope of cash between the checks. At first, Lewis simply noticed it. Then he began counting how much was missing to get the ticket. The first time, he took a small amount and almost immediately convinced himself, "Just this once, I'll never take money from my mother again." But one time turned into a second, then a third, then a fourth. and each time his heart pounded as if the whole house could hear it. But no one noticed, or noticed too late. He spent nights researching flights, comparing prices, reading carry-on baggage regulations, and poring over airport maps. He stopped spending even small change, putting it in a headphone box and texting Mira that everything would be soon. The more real this trip became, the less real his own home seemed. When his mother noticed the loss, she was furious. She came into his room that evening, empty wallet in hand, and asked, "Did you take my money?" Louis lied immediately. "No, you're mistaken." For a few seconds, she simply stared at him, trying to discern from his eyes whether he was lying. Louis began to get nervous, and she realized it all. So she grabbed a floor lamp standing against the wall and slammed it into his back. The lamp fell, his mother left, and Louis was left alone, his face burning, and the strange thought that there was definitely no turning back now. After that, things got even worse at home. His mother started dropping in on him without knocking, checking his desk, demanding his phone password, and threatening to take away his computer. His father tried to speak calmly, but his composure was useless. Louis barely left his room. He sat at his computer screen, texting Mira and plotting his route step by step. Call a taxi, check in, don't ask unnecessary questions, sit by the window, fly, meet. He bought the ticket at night when everyone was asleep. He stared at the payment button for a long time and then pressed it. A confirmation message appeared on the screen. The flight was in 2 days. His relief turned to terror. He sent Mira a screenshot. She didn't respond right away. Those few minutes felt like an eternity. Then came a message. "Did you really do this?" Then another. "Just don't tell anyone." That morning, the bank sent my mother a notice. Almost $800 had gone to the airline. She went up to him, phone in hand, and asked what it was. This time, Louis lost it first. He screamed, "You don't understand. Mira is the only person who cares about me. She cares about me, and stay out of my life!" My mother's face trembled. She grabbed a broom handle, slammed it against the cabinet several times, then snatched the phone and laptop from him. Louis slammed the door and sat down on the floor. Instead of fear, he felt rage and an even more terrifying determination. A couple of hours later, he remembered the old phone in his desk drawer. The screen was cracked, the battery life was poor, but the Wi-Fi worked. He charged it and texted Mira, "I'm still coming." She responded almost immediately, asking if he was sure, then sent him the meeting place, a shopping center near the train station in the town where she lived. Louis took this as proof that it was real. Before dawn, he packed his backpack, documents, charger, water, the rest of his money, and a hoodie. Then he left the house as quietly as if afraid to wake his parents. The street was empty and gray. The taxi arrived quickly. On the way to the airport, Louis kept checking his pocket for his passport. Amid the stream of people, the 14-year-old boy with his backpack and trembling hands was of no interest to anyone. When the boarding call came, he felt giddy with happiness. He really did make it. Just a little more, and everything would change. The first hour and a half of the flight felt like the beginning of a new life. He photographed the clouds and imagined the Mira at the terminal exit. Then the plane shook. First once, then even harder. The passengers exchanged glances. A flight attendant walked quickly down the aisle. The lights flickered. Then everything happened too fast. The cabin filled with screams. Masks fell from above. Something was said over the speakers, but the words were drowned out by the roar. The plane plunged sharply. Louis's ears popped. His phone slipped from his hand, and someone up ahead began praying out loud. He gripped the seat in front of him, and in that second realized that all his plans had been childish and terribly small, compared to the real disaster that was already bearing down on him. The pilot tried to reach the nearest runway, but the plane was descending too quickly, and he plunged straight into the water. It almost immediately filled the cabin, and the passengers were already drowned. Lewis wasn't a strong swimmer, but instinct compelled him to reach for the light. He surfaced, then went under again, frantically flapping his arms, and miraculously found some debris. Pieces of seats, bags, plastic, and someone's belongings floated around. Somewhere, people were screaming. Then the screams became less frequent. The waves slapped his face, his fingers slipped, his teeth chattered so hard that his jaw ached. There, amidst the water and debris, everything that had once seemed important lost its value in a matter of seconds. Neither Roblox, nor Bloxburg, nor Mira, nor the meeting for which he had stolen money and run away from home meant nothing anymore. Only one thing mattered: staying alive for another minute, then another. Lewis cried, screamed, choked, calling for his mother and father, although just yesterday he had been thinking only about how to get away from them. He was shaking from cold and terror. Time had disintegrated. He didn't know how much had passed, an hour, 2, or more. It seemed to him that the sea would never let him go. When a searchlight appeared overhead, he initially thought he was imagining things. But he heard a helicopter and dimly saw people in bright suits. Rescuers were lifting survivors one by one. Lewis could barely feel his arms when they reached for him. They pulled him in, wrapped him in a thermal blanket, put a mask on him, and placed him on a stretcher. He wanted to say he needed to go home, but his lips were trembling so violently that no words came out. The parents learned about the flight from the news. At first, they simply discovered an empty room and a missing backpack. Then they saw the flight number, the crash site, and the passenger list. My father's legs buckled in fear and he sat down on the floor. My mother called several times, stumbling over her words, not believing what she was hearing. And only in the car to the hospital did she begin to cry for real. When they entered the room, Lewis lay pale, with a bandage on his arm and a cut on his cheekbone. His mother approached first, hugging him so tightly that he squeezed his eyes shut in pain, but still didn't let go. His father stood nearby, silent. That day, no one talked about money, about a ticket, about escape. All of that seemed too insignificant next to the fact that he was alive at all. Later, when the doctors declared the danger averted, the mother closed the door to the room and sat down across from him. Her face was gray with exhaustion. She asked for whom he had done this. Lewis remained silent. Then she said, very quietly, that for several hours she had seen him only on the list of the dead, that she had managed to imagine his body being pulled from the water, that she had never in her life been so afraid as she was that night. Then her voice broke. She slapped his arm with an open palm once, almost desperately. Lewis did not pull his hand away. He looked down and understood that no punishment was more terrible than what had already happened. The phone was returned to him a few weeks later, when he was once again sleeping at home and waking up at the slightest noise. The old phone had 47 messages from Mira. First, she asked where he was. Then she wrote that she'd seen the news. Then she begged him to reply, at least something. The last messages were shorter and less frequent. Lewis read them all. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he wrote only, "I'm alive." He thought for a moment and added, "Never text me again." He turned off the phone, put it away in a drawer,